Welcome everyone to Legally Speaking. I'm Sonia Brown.
And I'm Kenya Johnson. Legally Speaking is brought to you by the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys, GABWA.
GABWA is a voluntary bar association that seeks to advocate for women and children and empower our communities. Please remember, this show is not intended to provide legal advice. So if you have a legal issue or concern, it's always best for you to consult an attorney.
On today's show, we're discussing immigration matters, current laws, and needed reform. We'll also hear practical advice about gaining citizenship and deportation defense. So if you know an undocumented citizen or a non-resident, grab a notepad. There's much more to come when we return on Legally Speaking. On June 24, 2000, GABWA and the Fulton County Juvenile Court, with the assistance of the Georgia Supreme Court Commission on Equality, began its award-winning Sister to Sister mentoring program. Sister to Sister's mission is to intervene in the lives of teen girls ages 13 through 17 and help keep them out of the juvenile justice system by providing nurturing, one-on-one mentoring relationships. If you'd like to learn more about Sister to Sister, please visit the website at sistertosistermentoring.org.
Welcome back to Legally Speaking. I'm Sonia Brown. On today's show, we're talking about immigration and non-citizens, and our guests today are leading the charge for immigration reform. We have with us on set today Attorney Sarah Hawk of Ogletree Deakins and Azadeh Shahshahani of the American Civil Liberties Union of Georgia. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
And before we get started talking about this very important topic, would you ladies just mind telling us a little bit about your practice and what it is that you do? We'll start with you, Ms. Shahshahani.
Sure, and thanks again for having me. I work specifically on immigrants' rights issues as well as post-9/11 discrimination against Muslim, Middle Eastern, and South Asian communities. And so, in our work we employ a variety of strategies such as impact litigation, human rights documentation, legislative advocacy, and organizing with the ultimate aim of bringing Georgia and its localities into compliance with constitutional and international human rights standards in treatment of immigrant communities in Georgia.
Wonderful. And Ms. Hawk, what does your practice entail?
Yes, I'm a partner at Ogletree Deakins, and I practice business immigration. So I help companies, universities, athletes, entertainers, gain their employees' work visas, and that includes the green cards as well.
Well, I'm very excited to talk about this topic. It's a hot button topic right now in Georgia and nationally. And so, Ms. Hawk, I'll start with you. What is the comprehensive immigration reform proposals that are being discussed right now by the Gang of Eight and in Washington?
Yes. As we know, immigration is really important. It's very controversial. The bill is very comprehensive. It touches on border security, a crackdown on employers for hiring illegal workers, earned legalization, a path to citizenship for undocumented workers, and also just giving streamlining immigration in general.
So it's a lot going on in this bill. And I want to talk specifically about what's going on here in our state, here in Georgia. So Ms. Shahshahani, could you tell me a little bit about what's going on as far as the immigration system here in Georgia? Give us a little bit of background, what you're seeing.
Right. So, it's really a tough situation for immigrant communities, specifically undocumented communities. They're being impacted by local enforcement of immigration laws that's really leading to racial profiling and other abuses in counties such as Cobb, Gwinnett, Hall, and Whitfield, and also the immigration detention system, which nationally there's about 400,000 people per year who are detained in about 250 facilities nationwide. We also see that problem here in Georgia, where we have the largest immigration detention center in the country in Lumpkin, Georgia, and it's about 1,750 men who are detained there on a daily basis. And it's important for your listeners to know that a lot of these individuals should not be in detention in the first place. You know, they don't pose any risk to society, and they're not flight risks, and many of them have been here for decades, and they have very strong ties to the community.
Sounds good. And it's again, there's just so much going on, and I want to sort of hone in on what you see as the main issue. Attorney Hawk, what's the main issue that we're dealing with, specifically in Georgia, with immigration?
Right. Well, there are over 313 million people in the U.S., and about 11 million are undocumented.
Wow.
And Georgia has a population, too, that's undocumented, about 440,000. So Georgia, like some other states, about 5 states, pass their own state immigration laws. Immigration is really a federal type law, but states like Georgia have passed show me your papers provisions that would allow police officers to ask undocumented workers, or if they suspect them to be illegal, to show their documentation. And so from a civil rights perspective, that has been a big issue for Georgia. And then also for the economy of Georgia, agriculture is Georgia's #1 industry, about $68 billion worth. And when the Georgia law requires companies to use E-Verify, which is a federal database to confirm whether they're legal or not. And that has really scared off workers. So we're facing crops that are rotting in the fields, workers who have fled the state to other states like Tennessee, and basically farmers are facing this huge shortage of laborers in agriculture.
So it's impacting Georgia quite a bit economically, as well as us needing the reform. What if I am a non-documented person living in Georgia? Is there anything that I can do? Are there any pathways to either citizenship or to me becoming a legal resident here in the state?
The issue with that is once you're undocumented, you are now unlawfully present in the U.S., and there are 3-year and 10-year bars of reentry once you leave the U.S. So if you are undocumented, you cannot change status to become legal. And the problem is that once you're here in the U.S., you don't want to leave because your fear is you can't come back. You might have family members here, you might have a job here. And so the issue now is that unless there is some kind of change in the law, you cannot have a path to legalization of your status.
So if I'm not legal, let's say I get stopped, traffic stop, whatever it is, and I get detained, what happens then, Ms. Shahshahani? What happens after I'm detained as an illegal person in this state?
Right, so if you're detained in one of those counties that I mentioned earlier, Cobb, Gwinnett, Whitfield, and Hall, the sheriffs in those counties have an agreement with the federal government that basically deputizes certain sheriff deputies to perform some functions of an immigration official. And so those officers can start basically deportation proceedings against undocumented individuals, and then eventually those people are placed in deportation proceedings. And I should remind your listeners that over the past 4 years, every year about 400,000 people have been deported from the U.S. And obviously, tactics such as the local enforcement of immigration laws has had a large part to do with that.
You said local enforcement, we've talked about federal. Who oversees, what agency oversees immigration from a high level? Which agency would oversee that?
Well, there's a Department of Homeland Security that was implemented after 9/11. And then you have several agencies like ICE, Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. And then you have Customs Border Patrol. So there are several agencies involved in enforcement for immigration.
Okay. And so we have some counties where we have deputized local officials. In other ways, how are the local officials or local governments working with the federal government to deal with immigration?
Right, so I already mentioned one way, the 287G. There's also another program called the so-called secure communities. Of course, we think that the program is actually making communities less safe, where if immigrant communities are taken to jail for any reason, it could be for a minor traffic violation, then their fingerprints are taken and are sent over to the federal government. And if the federal government determines that they're undocumented, then they're going to ask local law enforcement to hold the person in detention until the federal government has had a chance to go and pick them up and place them in deportation proceedings.
And we talked about one of the ways with the Show Me Your Papers, this local, proposal or bill. if we're dealing with that, I know Arizona has something pretty similar. Is it constitutional, and where are we right now with that battle?
Exactly. Right now, with the Arizona law, the Supreme Court did decide that some of the provisions were not legal. They did allow the show me your provisions to go through. So in Arizona, police officers shall ask for papers for those they think are undocumented. In Georgia, the difference is they may ask. So our law is not quite as strict as Arizona's, but it is strict. Alabama has a very strict immigration law as well. The Southeast has several states with their own immigration laws.
And I guess with the amount of, as you mentioned, undocumented persons here in Georgia, and hopefully they're watching this show, what is a takeaway that each one of you would want to give to someone who may be watching this show, information that they need to know? They're frightened, they're afraid. Some of them have children who are citizens, but they're not citizens. What is it that you would like to say to them, the best advice that you could give to them right now?
So, as Sarah mentioned, the Show Me Your Papers provision of Georgia's anti-immigrant law, House Bill 87, is in effect. Some law enforcement agencies around the state have chosen to implement it. Some chose not to have to implement it. But in either case, it's very important for people to be aware of their rights. Even if you're in a 287G county, even if you're undocumented, you still have basic constitutional rights. And one of the most important is your right to remain silent. So, other than your name, there's no need to provide additional information unless you have spoken to an attorney. And it's also very important to remember never to sign a document before having consulted an attorney, because you could be giving away your rights.
Excellent, excellent. And Ms. Hawk, what would you say?
Well, I would say that immigration is very big. There are many sides to it. There's a business immigration side. We have many students who are in science, technology, engineering, math, STEM students, who once they graduate from our universities can't get jobs because of the visa situation. And so there are many big companies in the U.S. who are advocating for more H-1B work visas, for example, or more green card visas to keep and retain these talented individuals. So immigration from a larger perspective is both economic, it's philosophical, it's humanitarian. Do we want this talent to go away and leave the U.S., go to other countries? Do we want to treat these people as humans, these women, these children who came here brought by their parents, and they're called dreamers. They dream of hoping to stay here and get some status. So that's the thing that I'm concerned about is, when we say immigration, it affects us on moral issues, economic issues, and political issues.
And I think this is such a broad topic, as you both said, and so I would love to have you come back and talk to us more. We can really get in depth with this. What I definitely will do with our viewing audience is put up information where they can get in touch with your organizations and find out what they need to do to help protect themselves and keep themselves safe. So ladies, I definitely thank you for being a part of this discussion and helping us to start this discussion here in Georgia.
Thank you.
And when we come back, we'll continue our conversation on immigration, non-citizens, and immigration reform. Stay with us. There's more to come on Legally Speaking.
On June 24, 2000, GABWA in the Fulton County Juvenile Court, with the assistance of the Georgia Supreme Court Commission on Equality, began its award-winning Sister to Sister mentoring program. Sister to Sister's mission is to intervene in the lives of teen girls ages 13 through 17 and help keep them out of the juvenile justice system by providing nurturing, one-on-one mentoring relationships. If you'd like to learn more about Sister to Sister, please visit the website at sistertosistermentoring.org. Welcome back to Legally Speaking. Today's topic is immigration law. Now we're joined by attorney Safiya Byers of the Byars Firm. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Attorney Byers, please tell us a little bit about your practice.
Sure. Well, we focus on family immigration. So we show our clients the best ways to get their immigration cases approved the first time while reducing their processing time and avoiding those immigration red flags that result in delays, denials, and deportation.
Now, you mentioned family immigration law. Tell us about that.
Sure. Well, family immigration is a little bit different from business immigration. Family immigration is where you're getting your permanent benefits from your family members. So you've gotten married, you're getting your benefits through your spouse, or you're getting your benefits for your children and your parents.
Now, recently there's been a lot of discussion about immigration reform. How does that affect family immigration law, and when can we expect to see those changes?
Well, in terms of the changes, we're not quite sure. We're looking at maybe April or May of this year, but it's going to have a very big direct impact on family immigration. The current reform is going to give individuals who are already here, undocumented individuals, a pathway to citizenship. And it will probably also expedite those family immigration law cases that have been pending for many years.
Well, speaking about that pathway to citizenship, how does someone become a permanent resident or a citizen?
Sure. Well, to become a permanent resident, your family member needs to petition for you. And they petition for you, they identify you as their relative. You show the relationship, and if you are eligible for a green card, you'll get permanent residence. After you become a permanent resident, you can stay in the U.S. for 5 years or 3 years and then apply for citizenship.
Now, what if you came to the United States not through the Department of Homeland Security? If you came through the country by other means,
Right.
Is there a way that you can become a documented citizen?
Yes, there is. Your processing time will be a lot longer. But if you came with no status and you got married to a U.S. citizen, the current process is they can file for you, but you would need to return home for the interview. And actually, the provisional waiver, which will take effect March 4th of this year, is going to help expedite that. Basically, the waiver is you're asking forgiveness for having entered the country illegally, and you show you will get forgiveness based on hardship to your U.S. citizen family.
Attorney Byers, I've heard the phrase deferred action before. Can you explain to our viewers what that means?
Sure. Deferred action is for children who came to the U.S. without status before their 16th birthday. They're still here, and they have completed high school. They have no adverse criminal history. What the government will do is actually give them a work permit for 2 years and prevent them from being deported. Great. So it's a way of relief for kids.
Great. Now, you discussed long processing times.
Yes.
What are they currently?
Processing time varies by country, and it also varies depending on the petitioner. Permanent residents have less rights than U.S. citizens. So if a permanent resident petitions for a family member, that family member will be placed on a waiting list. So you file for your family member, your case is approved, and then you're on a waiting list. And once they reach that date, then you're eligible for a green card. You could be looking at 4 years, 8 years, and beyond.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, does criminal actions, if you were charged with a criminal offense, does that have any impact on your application to become a resident or a citizen?
It certainly does. It can make you ineligible, and immigration is looking for offenses that could make you an aggravated felon. And to be an aggravated felon, it could be as simple as having a misdemeanor charge within the state of Georgia. They're also looking for crimes that they consider to be crimes of moral turpitude, which means that they feel that you have bad character because of those criminal convictions. But it's a case-by-case basis.
Have you seen any particular crimes that definitely qualify for a denial of an application?
Yes. The shoplifting offenses in Georgia, unfortunately, it's a misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. It's 12 months confinement. Nobody ever spends a day in jail, especially if they're a first-time offender. But for immigration purposes, that charge will make you an aggravated felon for immigration benefits, and you are automatically disqualified.
Now, if you fled your country of origin because you were a victim of a crime or some political actions were going on that put you in danger,
Yes.
Does that give you a grounds to apply for citizenship?
Yes, it does. It does give you grounds to seek shelter here in the U.S. You get a temporary status, you get asylum status or refugee status, so long as you can make out the claim of your persecution. And then you'll be granted permanent resident, and after a few years, you can apply for citizenship if you choose to.
So what are some of the common scenarios that you see in your practice?
Most of the scenarios are individuals who came here as visitors or students, and they got married, and now they want to settle down in the U.S., and they have nowhere to begin. And so when they come in, we give them a roadmap as to how to transition from their temporary status to their permanent status.
Now let's talk deportation for a moment.
Yes.
What are some of the reasons that Department of Homeland Security would look to deport someone, and are there any defenses available?
Yes, for deportation, anyone who's in the U.S. without status is deportable. However, there are individuals who are in the U.S. with status. They have a visitor's visa, temporary visa, or they're a permanent resident, but their criminal history has is not going to take that status away from them, and so they're deportable. Defenses that they may have, they may qualify for certain benefits that we can actually apply before the immigration court. There's also cancellation of removal. This is for people that have been here for 10 years with no status, they have family, they have good character. The court will actually give them permanent residence.
Now, years ago, I clerked briefly for an immigration attorney, and I remember all the forms that had to be filled out.
Yes.
Have they streamlined those processes in any way?
A little bit. You can now file online for some cases, but for the most part, we still have the forms, and I know a lot of practitioners, including myself, actually prefer the forms because we have an actual paper document, we can track it, and we can submit our supplemental documentation with it.
Now, for those do-it-yourselfers, is it practical for someone to apply for citizenship on their own, or how necessary is it to seek legal counsel?
Well, if they're applying for citizenship and they have no criminal history, it is a practical issue. They could apply for it if they choose to. However, I always tell my clients, immigration is not just about the forms. Those forms are there just to collect biographic data. Whether or not you're actually eligible is a legal issue. And so I always tell my clients, if you do have the resources, retain counsel.
So now how can non-citizens determine that they're getting the best legal advice if they do choose to seek counsel?
The best thing is to bring all of your information, make sure that you're actually going to a licensed attorney. In Georgia, there's a lot of notarios, unauthorized practice of law. There are a lot of companies that will fill out your forms and they're not actually attorneys. So the first thing to do is just to make sure your attorney is licensed by the state bar, and you can visit the state bar website or give them a call, and then take all of your documentation with you. Any work that needs to be done should be in writing. If you're not getting a contract, if you're not getting receipt for fees that have been paid, if you're not getting copies of documents that have been filed, those are red flags.
So you hire an attorney, you've applied for residency or citizenship, and you're denied. What are the next steps?
It depends on your denial. If it's a procedural denial, which means that they denied it because you didn't submit a form, you can possibly do an appeal and just refile. You can either refile the case or you can appeal it if you believe that they entered the wrong decision based on the law. But you can always appeal, or you can simply refile the same case and address those concerns that they had the first time.
Okay. And what are some of the grounds that a denial is issued, and how can you avoid that type of denial?
You can avoid that denial by making sure your application is complete, making sure that you actually are in fact eligible for benefits. A lot of times when people apply, they assume that the government is going to do their due diligence and make sure that their application is complete, when the opposite is true. When you apply, we have the burden to show that you're eligible. So make sure you retain counsel. That way you'll know if you are in fact eligible and provide the necessary evidence.
Well, Attorney Byers, thank you so much for being with us today. If our viewers want to contact you, how can they reach you?
Sure, they can give us a call at 404-992-6506, or they can send us an email to sbyers@byarslawgroup.com.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
When we come back to Legally Speaking, we'll wrap up today's show. Stay with us. On June 24, 2000, GABWA in the Fulton County Juvenile Court, with the assistance of the Georgia Supreme Court Commission on Equality, began its award-winning Sister-to-Sister mentoring program. Sister-to-Sister's mission is to intervene in the lives of teen girls ages 13 through 17 and help keep them out of the juvenile justice system by providing nurturing, one-on-one mentoring relationships. If you'd like to learn more about Sister to Sister, please visit the website at sistertosistermentoring.org.
Welcome back to Legally Speaking. Kenya, this show was so powerful. There was so much information, and I think one of the biggest things I'm taking away from this is that this is one of the biggest civil rights issues of our day, I think.
It is. Immigration laws are so important to us all. It's a moral issue, it's an economic issue, and from a human rights standpoint, we have to pay attention.
Definitely, and I'm really glad our guests were here today to speak about this issue because it affects so many, if not all of us, as you said, in so many different ways.
To our viewers, please remember that this show is not intended to give legal advice. So should you have a legal concern, it's always best for you to contact an attorney.
Well, that just about wraps up our time on this edition of Legally Speaking. But before we go, we'd like to invite you to join us in this conversation. So please, send us your questions or feedback to legallyspeaking@gabwa.org. We'd love to hear from you, so call us on the Voice of GABWA at 678-825-5675. And be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at @LS_GABWA. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Sonia Brown.
And I'm Kenya Johnson. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Legally Speaking.